For today's science, you're going to read pages 6, 7, 8, and 10 and answer those questions. I just wanted to briefly go over yesterday's information. So hopefully you picked a couple questions to talk about and write down some general notes or information, something you know about extinct organisms or fossils or those types of things. Now for questions 1 and 2, right? If you're looking at the anatomical structures, which means like their body structure, their anatomy of the hummingbird and the crane and the dragonfly, then you're going to see that the wings of the hummingbird are more similar to the wings of the crane. And so because of that, so based on anatomical similarity, so similar structures in their anatomy, the hummingbird is likely more closely related to the crane than the dragonfly. So I would like to think that you guys do know that hummingbirds and cranes are birds and a dragonfly is an insect. So birds are more closely related to one another than insects are to birds. But, it is, sometimes people say, okay, hey, the dragonfly's flying, the hummingbird flies, and they're both small. But scientists are going to look more at the anatomical similarities and other similarities to find out how closely two organisms are related. In lesson 1, we're going to be talking about the fossil record and fossils. The main points of this lesson are, number 1, that not all organisms that live form fossils, and that fossils provide evidence of once living organisms. And so some of the situations that may help an organism to become fossilized is that their body gets covered up by sediment rather quickly. So sediment has to do with like mud and water flowing and covering up that organism with soil and debris. That is more likely to happen with animals that live in the water or near the water. So fossils can form in a variety of ways, but it's more likely that it would happen for organisms that live in the water. And so at the bottom of the second page, right, it says right here, ways that fossils can form, and why are animals that live in water more likely to be fossilized than animals than land animals. And that is a typo in there. So, right. So basically, fossils form most often when an organism's remains are quickly buried by sediments. Right. So this quick burial occurs more often in rivers, lakes, and oceans than it does on land. So that's going to cause animals that live in the ocean or in rivers or near that water to become fossilized more often. We talked about this briefly yesterday, but you're going to choose 2 types of fossils on page 7. So you're going to read about these different types of fossils and then compare, what those fossils are like or what scientists can learn between those 2 fossils. Like, for example, if you're talking about a trace fossil versus a permineralized fossil, right? The permineralized fossil, you can see the bone structure of the animal versus the trace fossil, you can see like a footprint or an imprint. So you can learn different pieces of information. From the trace fossil, you may be able to learn how long the steps were, how they walked, how they were on land, versus the permineralized fossil will give you more like of their body structure. And you wouldn't learn that from just a trace fossil. You can see where their footprints were, but you can't see maybe how tall the animal was or anything like that. So kind of just compare and contrast. That's what this is going to help you to do, those 2, choosing 2 different fossils. Okay. You may notice that there is a lab right here. We will be doing that lab. So that will be next week or the week after, just depending on how we pass supplies out. But I just wanted to give you guys an overview of science for today, and let me know if you have any questions.